Jim Blakely, and I'm the proud son of the late Captain Everett Blakely of the 100th Bomb Group. Back in the days, the dark days of World War II, my dad flew a B-17, whose name, just the Snappin, we honor in the sunshine today. Today, as you give that name to an Air Force tanker airplane, you accomplish something larger and even more enduring than naming a single aircraft. You honor and remember those mighty B-17s and the brave young men who often named their planes before they flew them into history. With some names, they mocked the danger they faced in the sky. Names like Flak Shack, Oh Nausea, Escape Kit, Slightly Dangerous, and Lane Maiden. Or other names that were called happier times: Piccadilly Lily, Alice from Dallas, Pasadena Nina, Sexy Susan, and even Sweater Girl. Many were named by those with a sense of humor: High Life, Pickle Puss, Wild Cargo, or in my father's case, a name making light of the fact that he was late in returning to base. It happened in June of 1943 on a mission back from bombing the submarine pens at St. Nazaire to cut off the fuel supplies of U-boats, keeping American ships and supplies from reaching England. The men knew there were 100 flak guns over the target at St. Nazaire. There were 4 German fighter bases within 50 miles. The mission was not, as they say, a milk run. My dad and his crew were leading the high squadron, and for 20 minutes the Luftwaffe kept them in their sights. As flak exploded everywhere, Dad set up a red flare indicating they were hit and dropping out of formation. They made it back to base, coming in on just 2 engines and with gaping holes in their vertical tail fin. We kidded Blakely about flying alone, Steve's dad, Harry Crosby, would later recall in his book, A Wing and a Prayer. We called him the Provisional Group, an outfit that comes to the base to replace missing crew. Blakely responded, "We were behind you, just a snapping at your heels." And that's where the plane got its name. That plane figures prominently in Masters of the Air, the 9-part series created by Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks. Harry Crosby, who flew as Dad's navigator, narrates pieces of several episodes of that series. And if you want to see raw courage and selfless dedication by boys barely out of their teens, let me encourage you strongly to watch it. The 100th Bomb Group flew out of Fort Abbott Airfield. And if you want to experience what it felt like to be there, let me encourage you to make the short journey there for yourself. A great group of volunteers have restored the control tower and turned it into a museum where they bring back those days to life in stories and pictures. They do a wonderful job, and we're proud to have many of those volunteers with us here today. I thank them for doing what Spielberg and Hanks and many young actors and actresses do in Masters of the Air. They keep history alive. And they do it in a way that we will leave you entertained, informed, and with a sense of gratitude for all we owe to those young men who flew B-17s into history not so long ago. Once upon a time, the sky was crowded with those remarkable aircraft, but flying the B-17 in formation, some said, was like grappling with a bear. Pilots wrestled it into the air, supported by the crew of 9. Others faced flak, frostbite, and fear in cabins that were unpressurized, unheated, open to the elements of blistering cold, wind, and unpredictable weather, and the deadly accuracy of Luftwaffe guns. They were a team who depended on each other and on their aircraft to succeed and survive. Fortunately, the B-17 was built for danger, able to fly after sustaining tremendous damage from fighters and from the anti-aircraft guns of the enemy. The original Justice Snappin came to its final end when all of its controls were lost and it flew into a tree. It was the only way to bring it to a stop because all major navigational systems had been damaged beyond use. The salvage crew counted more than 1,200 holes in the fuselage, some, according to Harry Crosby, as big as a blanket. Harry's son, Steve, will tell you about the mission that led to that landing. Of course, the air tanker that will carry that name into the future is very different from the B-17 that carried it so proudly in the past. But in some fundamental way, their mission is the same. They bring new life to those they serve. In the case of an air tanker, that life is in the form of fuel. Justice Snappin will enable other planes to fly onward to remain into the sky, to go farther, to do more. It will help the 100th Air Refueling Wing achieve what it does every day. Defend the best country on earth. It's carrying on a proud tradition because back in those days of World War II, Justice Snappin, like so many B-17s flown by so many brave men, protected life itself. Not just the lives of those who were part of the crew, but the lives of those on the ground. It gave life and hope and a future to so many during the darkest times when they could only look to the sky and trust those whose names they would never know, young airmen they'd never be able to thank, but whose courage would enable them and us to enjoy freedom that would not have been possible without them. Back in the 1980s, I did a long YouTube interview with my dad about those days, about the missions he flew and how many of his fellow crew members and airmen he remembered. He said he remembered all those who came back and all those that passed away. Jimmy, he said with a faraway look in his eyes, I remembered them all. And today, in this dedication, so do we. Thank you.
I repeat what Jim Blakely said. Thank you all for inviting me here today for this remarkable honor to be a small part of the urgent work that you all do every day. I arranged that. Thank you, Carl, for setting that up. You just heard from Jim Blakely the origin story of the first Justice Snappin, and of the magnificent role of the B-17s, the 100th Heavy Bombardment Group, and the remarkable young men who saved us in those days from tyranny. But what you did not hear was about the extraordinary skill and bravery of Jim's father, Captain Everett Blakely, the command pilot in Justice Snappin. I'll fix that right now. And I'll try to add a human window on what that war was like, and the final mission of Justice Snappin. Final, that is, until now. As I recount this mission, I've combined pieces of several documents from my dad, who was navigator on the Bremen mission represented here. This is from his mission report and from his letters to his mother and his letters to his wife, Jean, my mom. All of this was written in October 1943, 82 years ago, in the dark middle of World War II. And so it begins. The prelude to this mission was normal. There had been a couple of days of pre-briefing in which the pilot, navigator, and bombardier made secret trips to Air Division headquarters. The general idea was that we, and many hundreds of other heavy bombardment, were to destroy the city of Bremen. The IP was reached at 1521. Earlier in this narrative, I've classed this mission as normal. From this point on, that classification no longer holds true. We were leading the Air Division over the most heavily defended part of Germany, except for Berlin. 30 seconds before the bombs were dropped, a burst of flak hit our nose compartment, shattering the window to the right of the bombardier's head. One fragment struck the bombardier, Lieutenant James Douglas, in the left side. It tore through his clothing and ripped his flak suit. Despite this distraction, the bombardier Douglas continued the manipulation of his bomb sight and bombs away at 1525. A mere matter of seconds later, our number 4 engine was destroyed. The control wires were shattered and the left elevator was ripped to shreds, plunging our plane into a sort of spinning dive, completely out of control. We were plunging down in a helpless, careening dive. Flames were blazing from our number 4 engine. Our control surfaces were cut and torn. The normal reaction on the part of our pilots should have been to think about their own personal safety. Or maybe in the case of extreme nobility of character, perhaps they would have been thinking about the other men on the crew. But they did not. Even in this crisis, for 1 minute, forget that they were the leaders of a great bomber armada. Their first thought was of the crews behind them. In unison, as we fell into our dive, the words came over the interphone to our tail gunner: "Signal the deputy leader to take over." I can't help but think that as they fought for their lives, they might have been excused for being too busy to think of their command, but such was not the case. We were losing altitude so rapidly that we didn't believe it possible for us to stay up long enough even to jump. Blakely called for an interviewing check to prepare for the jump, but we found that the back 4 stations of the plane had been cut off, so we couldn't call the men. Of course, we couldn't just leave without telling the boys in the back. So Blakely called for a heading home, which my father, gave him. And Blake started fighting to get that airplane under control. And Jean, talking to my mom, there are just 2 reasons that I'm here today. One of them because of Captain Blakely's superb piloting, and the other because of the skills of our gunners. We had to fight our way clear across Germany at the altitude which made us duck soup for every flak artist and pursuit pilot in the area. I wish I could impress you with the gravity of our situation. Our controls were shot away. Our control surfaces on the wings, elevators, and rudder were one sieve of holes. We only had 2 engines and a little power from the 3rd. Worst of all, 3 of our gunners and good old Charlie Via, who was riding his tail gunner, had been wounded during the raid. They still manned their guns though. We didn't even know that they had been hit. How they did it, I don't know, nor does any pilot who has heard the story. But Blakely and Major Kidd somehow managed to nurse our altitude so we did reach the Holland border, and finally the Dutch Ocean, and we still had 9,000 feet of altitude. I knew where the heavy guns were on the coast and also the fighter fields, so we steered around them successfully. But we were so low that the coastal batteries of light guns, machine guns, and 20mm cannons opened up on us. And then there was hell to pay. We could see the tracers coming up at us from all angles. Doug, the bombardier, turned around to say something to me. Just then a couple of holes appeared right between us, and the cotton batting of the plane flew all around. A bullet had gone right between us. Meanwhile, Everett Blakely was putting the plane through violent evasive action, an action so violent that every time he turned, we lost 300 feet of valuable altitude. But we did get across the coast. When we started out across the North Sea, never did that old ocean seem so wide. We were just barely staying up, flying at an airspeed just 5 miles an hour faster than that at which the plane stalls out, and we would mush into the ocean. All of my navigation equipment was shot away, and we were listening so badly to one side that our compasses would stick on the sides of the air containers, so we had to navigate home by the sun. We were losing altitude so much that it became evident that we'd have to ditch, land in the water, and trust to our dinghies and to the British Air Sea Rescue System to get us home. But when Doug went back to take stock of the situation, he came back with the report that we had 4 badly wounded men and the information that our dinghies had been shot away. We couldn't ditch. So we started throwing away our stuff to lighten the plane. We threw everything, all our equipment, anything we didn't absolutely need. I threw $20,000 worth of bomb sights away, and almost as much value in some secret navigational equipment. We threw away our guns and our extra clothes, and it helped. Everett Blakely and Major Kidd coaxed the machine up to an extra 300 feet, and we headed for the nearest airfield in England. But our troubles weren't even close to over. Just as we hit the landing strip, all our controls gave way. We had no brakes, no hydraulic system, no emergency system, no rudder, no tail wheel. From that point on, our pilots, Blakely and Kidd, were just along for the ride, like the rest of us. We veered off the runway and hit a clump of trees and washed the plane out entirely. Jean, talking to my mom, my dearest wife, I just can't go on. All I can say is that we have gone through all of the fury that war can bring. We were hit bad. 4 of our crew were seriously wounded. Via is not expected to walk again. Saunders has only a slight chance to live. We lost 7 full crews. I love you so very much. I need you so badly. Love, Harry. Even in my dad's passionate retelling of this event, in official reports and personal letters, my dad exclaims about the skill of the pilots, the training of the gunners, and the extraordinary maintenance of the B-17. That's what readiness is all about. You never know when the life or death challenge will come, but it will come. I speak for all of the Crosby family, and I know the Blakeleys too. They were overwhelmingly proud that you, men and women, have stepped into the shoes of our fathers in the defense of liberty. And we wish you Godspeed.
Ladies and gentlemen, dedicated to the heroes of the B-17 Flying Fortresses and their sacrifices for the Bloody Hundred, Lieutenant Colonel England and Mr. Crosby will now unveil the Mozart, Just a Snappin, proudly displayed on the KC-135 Stratotrooper, tail number 60-0335. To the family of Logistics Readiness Squadron, RAF Mildenhall, 9 June 2025.
That the names of all of the crewmen of First to Snappin are on this, and I want to read them. The 8 October 1943 mission to Major J. Kidd, Lieutenant E. Blakely, Lieutenant H. Crosby, Second Lieutenant C. Via, Second Lieutenant J. Douglas, T. Sergeant M. Thornton, T. Sergeant E. Faulkner, S. Sergeant W. McClellan, S. Sergeant E. Yevich, S. Sergeant L. Nord, S. Sergeant L. Saunders. These men made that mission possible.
Thank you, everyone. At this time, Lieutenant Colonel England will give closing remarks.
All right, good morning, everybody. Once again, thank you all for coming out and being in attendance today. So this past weekend was the 81st anniversary of D-Day, and Lieutenant Crosby's contributions to that monumental effort are emblematic of what we do in the LRS today. So in the Logistics Readiness Squadron, we have 8 unique support specialties, some of them that pair nicely together, and others that are so disparate that they could be, and historically were, their own separate squadrons. Day in and day out, our logistics professionals perform their duties behind the scenes to ensure the overall mission success. So what does that have to do with Lieutenant Crosby and his legacy? Well, Lieutenant Crosby was also one of the lead planners for the 100 Bomb Group's mission for Operation Overlord, D-Day. Painstakingly preparing maps, flight plans, and formations for hundreds of different missions and variations. He would work 24 hours a day, and leading up to the launch of D-Day, even worked 75 hours straight, doing everything he could behind the scenes to ensure mission success. This intricate planning, driven by a commitment of accounting for every possible detail and mitigating every point of failure, mirrors the core competencies of logistic readiness. As logisticians and war planners, we understand that thorough preparation can be the difference between success and failure, life and death. So just as Lieutenant Crosby's detailed plans were crucial for the survival and success of his crews and teammates, our work today ensures that warfighters have the resources they need to accomplish their missions and return home safely. So to close out today's event and allow the families to leave with a couple more things and amazing memories, the community and a local artist also crafted another gift. So Mr. Blakely, Mr. Crosby, if you could once again join me. We have tail flashes of Just a Snap.
So have any of you seen Masters of the Air, the TV series watched by millions? Well, I just as an aside, this plane, Just a Snappin', is really the major plane star of the whole series because it's shown extensively in episode 2 and extensively in episode 3 and then again in 5. And there aren't any other planes in that series of the Masters of the Air that are shown to that extent. So this name, Just a Snappin', also belongs to the major plane star in Masters of the Air.